Very good evening to all of you. I welcome you all to the ICANN initiative, the Hindu and Indian Express analysis. We will start the day with the prelims theme of the day. So, in the prelims theme of the day, today we'll take up culture, in which we'll take up philosophies. So, there are two main schools of philosophies. So, under that, there are so many sub schools. So, you have to know the important points, that is, who are the proponents of each of these philosophies, and what is the core tenets of each of these policies, what do they tell. So, those core things you will have to know about these philosophies. So you might get get a question which is particularly asking you about a philosophy and which of the following statements are true about a particular philosophy. Or you may get a broad question which is like a match the following, wherein you get the proponents of these philosophies on the one side, and then what is the name of the philosophy that they propagated on the other side. So you may have to match it. This doesn't take much time for you, just 15-20 minutes to understand those core philosophies and what each of them tell and who were the proponents. So do this and go, don't neglect this area, because this is one very simple area which can be completed in a max half an hour, but you can really get this right if it comes in the exam. Now we'll start with the first topic of the day, which is related to the security issues. So this is a part of your GS paper 3 syllabus, which talks about the internal and external security issues of India. So this whole article was actually related to the China's aggression at the line of actual control. But however, the contents of the article in terms of the India-China relations and the border issues was not important. But what you must know, one term or one topic that this whole article is giving is that which you must know. For instance, if you get a question, let's say that India is facing a 2.5 front situation, and that is forming a formidable national security challenge for India. Comment. So this is a question that you might get in your GS paper 3 under the topic security issues. But if you do not know what is the meaning of 2.5 front situation, then you will not be able to write the answer. So then even if you know everything about the situation that India has with Pakistan and China, you will not be able to cover the third dimension, because most of us will be knowing the two front war situation that we speak about more commonly, the warlike situation with Pakistan on the one hand and with China on the other hand. But most of us may not be aware with the 2.5 warlike situation. So you must know that clearly first if you have to answer such a question. So in this whole article, that's the only relevant thing or the important thing that was there. So 2.5 war or 2.5 front situation means the instability that's there in Jammu and Kashmir, the volatile environment in Kashmir, and then the China and its aggressive behavior, and Pakistan, which has always been interfering with Kashmir and the kind of challenge that it poses at the border. So the 2.5 front situation means it is the rest of Kashmir, the challenge that is posed by aggressive China, and Pakistan on the other hand. So it is Pakistan, China and Kashmir, which amounts to the 2.5 front situation that you will have to discuss in the answer. Now we'll move on to the next topic. The next topic we'll talk about is the issues related to youth. In your GS paper 2, you have a separate topic that's called as a vulnerable sections, in which one of the vulnerable sections could be the youth. So this whole article gives some facts and figures about the youth as a percentage of the population, what is the definition of youth, and some of the problems that the youth are facing, along with facts and figures. And then it makes some recommendations on how the youth as a sector or as a chunk of population can be focused upon and to ensure their development. So first it begins by quoting the National Youth Policy. The National Youth Policy was formulated in 2014, and that defines youth to be persons who are between 15 years to 29 years of age. So this is the definition of youth, and if you consider this age group, then nearly 27.5% of our population will then come under this definition of youth. So here, as I have shown this in the form of a pie chart, you have to find certain innovative ways of projecting the data, be it pie chart or bar graphs or something like that. So you have to find out more ways of depicting your data, because just by writing it might not catch the eyes of the evaluator when he or she is just skimming through your answer. So youth will form 27.5% of our population. So now, as I said, no answer is complete without quoting facts and figures and examples. So now let's focus on some of the important facts and figures on youth that you should be aware of. The first thing is that according to this National Youth Policy Report, it says that the central government is spending nearly 2,710 rupees per youth. So the amount that the central government is spending on youth is 2,710 rupees per youth for education, skill development, employment, healthcare and food subsidies. So basically on various welfare issues of the youth like education, skill development and employment, central government is spending 2,710 rupees per youth. So this will amount, given that 27.5 percentage of the population comprises of the youth, so this amounts to a spending of nearly 90,000 crore rupees per year. So which means that even if we assume that this amount is the one that is spent by the central government, and even if we assume that even the state governments are going to spend an equal amount, then the total amount that we are going to invest in the youth is going to be even less than 1% of our country's GDP. But look at their population ratio. So if you consider the spending that is done for the youth as a proportion to the population of the youth of the total population of India, then that is very less. So in this context, the World Bank report has noted that if the investment that is done on children and youth is less, it is not the investment done on them is not proportion to the population ratio or is less, then that will cost the country nearly 4% of the GDP every year. So it is like if the government is not spending much on this very important section of the population, that is the youth, then the whole country as a whole stands to lose up to 4% of GDP per year. So this is the data given by the World Bank report itself. So this emphasizes the fact that we need to spend enough on the youth, because it should not be treated as an expenditure but rather as an investment, because the youth form that young chunk of the population which we call as a demographic dividend, and they need to be capitalized for the growth of the country. So if we do not spend enough on them, then it means that the country as a whole may lose up to 4% of GDP per year if inadequate investment is made on the youth. So this is one data that's given by the World Bank report. Also another data, which is the 2018 State of Working India report. So it is a State of Working India report. So this report says that the youth unemployment rate in India is at least 18.3%. So the 2018 State of Working India report says that the youth unemployment rate in India is at least 18.3%. So this statistics show that the rate of unemployment of youth in India is high. And the second important thing it shows is the amount of spending that's done by the government on youth, which form 27.5% of the population, is less than 1% of the GDP in total. Whereas the World Bank says that if inadequate investment is made on them, then it might cost the country up to 4% of GDP. So these are the important data that you must remember regarding youth. Then the article goes on to give some important suggestions and recommendations for focusing on this section of the population, out of which you may just remember some of the innovative ones which you may recommend as a part of your conclusion or way forward that you're going to write in the answer. So in that, this article talks about what is called as a youth component plan. You must have already heard about the special component plan for scheduled castes and the tribal sub-plan also. So the youth component plan is going to be very similar to that, where in the budget itself the outlays are made for this youth component plan. And there will be special focus on what needs to be done for the youth, how they need to be developed based on the sub-regional requirements for the youth. This budget itself will be bifurcated into this youth component plan, where separate focus and focused attention will be paid to the youth based on the percentage of the youth population, and also based on what their sub-regional requirements are, which could be very different from one state to the other. So this you can recommend as a part of the way forward or the conclusion in your answer, where you will be suggesting some remedies to going forward. You will be giving a futuristic solution. So this you can quote as your conclusion, which is the youth component plan, which is very similar to the tribal sub-plan or the special component plan for the scheduled castes. So now we'll move on to the next topic. The next topic we'll be dealing with is insolvency and bankruptcy. So as you all know, the government has introduced the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code 2016. What this bill is and an analysis of this bill is a separate topic which will take more time for discussion. So we will keep that for later times. So in this article, what we are going to see is an important limitation of the IBC 2016. So in your exam, you may have a question like analyze the implementation of the IBC 2016 in dealing with the insolvency and bankruptcy in the economy. So in this case, you will have to give the pros and cons of the implementation related to IBC. So this article gives one example of a flaw in the IBC, or a limitation that is there while implementing the IBC. So this can be quoted as an example when we are analyzing this whole topic of IBC, how successful it has been in dealing or tackling with the insolvency in the economy. So in this, what happened is whenever a firm goes for insolvency proceedings, then the firm which has a lot of debt pending, it is unable to pay back to its lenders, which could be banks or financial institutions, then such a firm which is unable to pay back its debts can initiate insolvency proceedings. When the insolvency proceedings are initiated, then insolvency professionals will be appointed and they will look at various alternatives how this firm which is debt laden could be helped. So in this case, what happened is Bhushan Power and Steel. So Bhushan Power and Steel had an outstanding debt of nearly 47,000 crore to the banks and financial institutions, which it was unable to pay back. So Bhushan Power and Steel initiated insolvency proceedings in the year 2017. So later on, JSW, so there was a bidding process to see if Bhushan Power and Steel could be taken up by some other good performing firms. So in that bidding process, JSW took over in the bidding process Bhushan Power. So it paid some amount for that and JSW took over the Bhushan Power. Now it is a JSW which has all the rights on the assets and the business of Bhushan Power. But in the meantime, what happened? Enforcement Directorate, it attached various properties on various premises of Bhushan Power, saying that the Bhushan Power had committed a fraud while taking loan from the banks. And it also said that there was some money laundering angle that was involved. So by saying all of these things, Enforcement Directorate started attaching the properties of Bhushan Steel. So now this posed the problem for JSW, which has now taken over Bhushan Power in managing the Bhushan Power, handling its business and trying to revive it. So JSW had to go to National Company Law Appellate Tribunal saying that ED is coming in the way of its the implementation of the IBC, and even after JSW has taken over Bhushan Power, it is unable to do anything. So then NCLAT has to say Enforcement Directorate to not do all these things. But in spite of all that, even recently Enforcement Directorate has attached further properties belonging to or further assets belonging to Bhushan Power. So this shows how the state agencies are themselves posing a hurdle in the implementation of IBC. When Bhushan Power was debt laden and it was already taken by another company, JSW, another state agency is posing a hurdle in this whole setup by attaching the properties of the Bhushan Power. So this you can quote as an example when you are discussing the pros and cons or critically analyzing the implementation or how successful IBC 2016 has been. So now we'll move on to the next topic. The next topic we are discussing is related to space, which is a part of your GS3 syllabus. You may have a direct question in mains about the scramjet and what is scramjet and what is that technology involved and what are the challenges, and also what is the utility of this technology for a country like India. But for now, let's limit this to the purpose for prelims. So let me explain what scramjet is, and remember this is only for your prelims exam, what I'm telling now. So scramjet comes from ramjet. So scramjet means it is supersonic ramjet. So that is how the name scramjet has come. It is supersonic ramjet. But you'll have to understand what ramjet is if you need to understand what scramjet is. And to understand what ramjet is, you will have to understand the process that happens in a jet engine. So ramjet is basically a type of jet engine. So what happens in a jet engine is it will take the fuel, all right, and this fuel is then burnt, which we call as the combustion. So combustion of the fuel happens, and then there is an exhaust, that is high velocity gases which are released, which provides the thrust for the vehicle to move ahead or move upwards. So this is the base and this moving upwards because of the high velocity of the exhaust gases is just a simple application of Newton's third law of motion. For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction. So in this, what happens is this fuel is there and this is combined with air. So first air is compressed, and this compressed air, usually when air is compressed, its temperature gets increased. So when this high temperature compressed air is mixed with the fuel, because of the high temperature of the compressed air, the fuel gets ignited. So that is what we call as combustion. And then there will be exhaust, which is high velocity gases released, and that provides the thrust for the jet engines to move about. So this is the basics of jet engine, and ramjet is one of the type of jet engine. So what you must know about ramjet is, in the ramjet also the air is taken from the atmosphere and it is compressed, just like in any other jet engine. But the only difference is, in the other jet engines they will have a separate compressor which is going to compress this atmospheric air which is taken up by the jet engine. But in ramjet it does not have a separate compressor, but it is because of the high speed of motion of the ramjet engine that the air is going to get compressed. So it does not have any separate compressor. It is the compression of air is dependent upon the fast or the high speed movement of the ramjet, so that because of this high speed the air gets compressed. So therefore, as the compression of the air is just dependent upon the high speed movement of the ramjet, so the speed is therefore the how much successful it is just therefore depends upon whether the ramjet is able to attain the right speed or not. So this is one drawback, or we can say that in this case the compression of the air depends upon the ability of the ramjet to attain high speed movement. So we can say that ramjet cannot attain very high speeds. So ramjet speed is up to just 6 Mach, that is 6 times the speed of light. It cannot cross 6 Mach, that is what we call as supersonic. But what happens in scramjet, which is a supersonic ramjet, is that it is able to attain speeds which are more than 6 Mach, that is it is able to attain supersonic speeds. So what it is going to do, the principle followed is the same thing, but it is just that the speed that the forward motion and the speed in the forward direction that scramjet attains is very huge, and because of this it is able to compress the hot air, and that is how it will further get that thrust, and that is how it is able to attain more than 6 Mach. So in your prelims you may get a question which can be based on the differences between ramjet and scramjet, or rather what is scramjet. So first thing you have to remember is both ramjet and scramjet are types of jet engines. Second you have to remember is both of these types, ramjet and scramjet, are going to compress air, but they do not have a compressor. They don't have a separate compressor. They are going to suppress air based on their high speed forward movement itself. Third is the difference, while ramjet is efficient at around 3 to 6 Mach, but scramjet is efficient, it is able to attain greater than 6 Mach speed. So in terms of speed also there is a difference. And what is the importance of scramjet? The importance of scramjet is usually when you talk of the Indian rockets, they have a very huge quantity of fuel that they carry with themselves, and mostly the fuel is oxygen. Approximately 200 tons of oxygen is carried by the rocket itself, and this carrying the fuel comprises nearly 85% of the weight of the rocket. So therefore this is a very inefficient way, because most of the weight of the comes from the fuel itself. Most of the weight of the rocket is because of the fuel itself. But if we somehow are able to reduce the weight of this fuel, then we can increase the payload, which is more important for us. So therefore, in this case, as oxygen, which is the fuel that itself contributes to nearly 85% of the rocket mass, so that is why this makes the Indian rockets very less efficient, because they are not able to carry on too much of the payload, and also this will increase the overall weight of the launch vehicle. But on the other hand, if you are using a scramjet engine which does not separately carry oxygen fuel, but rather gets the oxygen from the atmosphere and then compresses it based on its own high speed forward movement, then that can reduce the weight of the launch vehicle significantly. And once the weight of the launch vehicle gets reduced significantly, it can also increase the speed of the launch vehicle. So this can actually be very helpful to India, because first of all it will reduce the weight of the overall rocket, and secondly it is able to give the rocket higher speed also because of the overall less weight of the rocket. And third thing is, because it does not need to carry the fuel with itself, then the overall cost also comes down. The overall cost of the entire launching process also comes down. And in fact, scramjet engine can be used in ISRO's reusable launch vehicle also. So this is the third advantage. So you have to remember the importance of the scramjet technology. First, that the weight of the fuel is going to reduce, so therefore weight of the overall rocket is going to reduce, therefore it can increase the speed of the rocket, and thereby the cost can also be reduced, and it can be used in the reusable launch vehicle. These are the important advantages of this technology, which can be helpful in your prelims MCQs. So these were the other articles that were not really important. And in this deal in danger is about the Brexit. So in this, October 15 has been set as a deadline where the post-Brexit UK and EU trade deal is going to be negotiated. So let's wait till October 15, and then when the final decision comes, and then there will be many editorials on how this UK and EU trade deal is going to have an impact on India. Those editorials will come. So we will take up this topic that time, because in this editorial it was mainly related to UK and the Northern Ireland. If at all a question comes on Brexit, it's going to be in your GS paper 2, which talks about the impact of policies of other countries on India. So what we can expect in your international relations paper is what is Brexit and how this trade deal is going to have an impact on India, and how it is going to affect the India-UK relations or something like that. So let's wait for that analysis. This article per se was not relevant for the exam. So these were the other topics that again were not relevant for the exam. Now let's take up the prelims question based on current events. So recently an organization announced what is called as a global consortium of digital currency governance. You have to tell me what is it, what is this whole thing about, and also who announced it. All the details about this you need to know. So that is it for today. Thank you.